Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. There's a place in the galaxy so drenched in myth, so wrapped in dread, that even the Emperor's light recoils from it. It is not some haunted moon or daemon world shrieking from the eye of terror. No, it is the very center of the galaxy itself. A region left blank on charts, muttered about in forbidden canticles, whispered through gritted teeth by those who have stared too long into the void. In a galaxy of horrors, it stands apart. Not because of what is known, but because of what is not and cannot be known. Across 10,000 years of imperial rule, even the most devout cartographers and rogue traders have found themselves hesitating to trace paths toward the galactic core. Ships vanish, astropaths scream, the stars themselves seem wrong. But beneath all the silence and fear lies a singular, terrible question. What lurks there, unseen yet ever-present, shaping the warp and the material alike with its silent gravity? Something waits, something watches, and whatever it is, it does not want to be found. Or perhaps, it is waiting to be freed. The astronomican is often described as the psychic lighthouse of the Imperium, a blazing beacon of psychic energy projected from the golden throne of Terra. It enables navigation across the roiling tides of the warp, allowing the God Emperor's dominion to span the stars. But like any great light, it casts shadows, and one of those shadows stretches ominously toward the galactic center, where no loyalist map dares to tread. The closer one gets to that forbidden heart, the more distorted the astronomican becomes. Not merely weaker, but corrupted, dissonant, as though the very space resents its intrusion. Pilots speak of a kind of madness that descends when attempting to chart courses inward. Not the usual warp-born hallucinations, but a deeper, cold paranoia, the feeling that the astronomican is being twisted into something else, as if filtered through an unseen will. Some radical scholars of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica theorize that this is not a flaw, but an act of defense. That the Emperor's psychic light does not fade near the core due to weakness, but because it is actively diverted, a deliberate avoidance. As if the core is something even he, the master of mankind, wishes to keep hidden. It is a haunting thought that the astronomican, which touches every known corner of the galaxy, falters not from exhaustion, but from rejection. Not a lighthouse shining outward, but a veil drawn across something. And this veil may not be the Emperor's alone. Ancient tech priests and long-exiled navigators have compiled half-mad theories of a psychic net, a meshwork of reality manipulation, anchored by the throne itself to obscure what lies in the core. Not destroy it, not even imprison it, simply to keep it from being perceived. When one considers this, the entire notion of the Emperor's unbroken will begins to tremble. If he feared what lay within the heart of the galaxy enough to mask it from all but the most damned, what then must be its nature? Is it an ancient enemy? A weapon he once wielded and abandoned? Or perhaps something even he could not conquer, only deny? The most chilling theory among rogue inquisitors is that the astronomican is not projecting light, but acting as a psychic blindfold, aimed not at guiding ships, but at guiding minds away from what they are not meant to see. If this is true, then every warp journey becomes an act of compliance. Every prayer to the light, a quiet turning of the eye. The Imperium, in all its zealous glory, may simply be a machine designed to keep the secret buried. And there are those who whisper that the astronomican's occasional fluctuations blamed on warp tides or failing psychers are not malfunctions, but pulses. Warnings. That the thing at the center sometimes notices the blindfold and presses against it like fingers on eyelids. And when it does, those closest to the truth dream of stars that scream and of a throne not on Terra, but somewhere deeper, older, darker. A throne at the center of the galaxy where something vast and patient waits. The Eldar were once the undisputed masters of the stars. Long before the rise of mankind, long before the warp birthed its daemon children, the Eldar sailed the galaxy in magnificent craft worlds, their psychic senses attuned to the very rhythms of stellar life. They knew the song of every system, the death cry of every supernova, and the heartbeat of the galactic tides. And yet, even at the apex of their golden age, they avoided the core, not casually, not circumstantially, deliberately. It was an absence that screamed through their otherwise encyclopedic star charts, a vast emptiness where there should have been knowledge. Among surviving Eldar seers and Farseers even now, there is no consensus on what lies at the galactic center. Only a shared dread. When questioned, they speak in riddles. They say the core is where the future bleeds backward, or the mouth that devours memory. One ancient farseer, her spirit fractured across multiple infinity circuits, claimed to have seen the heart of the galaxy in a vision, and afterward she spent an entire Terran decade unable to speak in any tongue but that of the Necron-Tyre. Her craft world exiled her, fearing what lingered in her soul. The old myths of the Eldar speak of something they called the center that calls, an entity or phenomenon that predates their race, their gods, and perhaps even the warp itself. It was not evil, in the sense mortals understand evil. It was simply wrong. A wrongness that corrodes not just flesh, but causality. In some poems from before the fall, it is hinted that the laughing god once traveled toward the core in jest, boasting that he would prank the void into revealing its secrets. But the tales say he returned silent and never joked of stars again. Even more disturbing is what isn't present. The Eldar, meticulous to the point of obsession, never recorded any craftworld paths through the core region. It's as though the stars there do not exist or cannot be counted. Not even the lost Exodite tribes speak of the core, a silence rare even for their reclusive kind. And for a race as prideful as the Eldar, such uniform avoidance suggests not ignorance, but an ancient decision to turn away, as if from a wound in reality itself. In the fragments of the Crone worlds, the shattered remnants of Eldar planets now lost in the Eye of Terror, there are ruins with carvings that depict the galaxy not as a spiral, but as a coil. A serpent coiled around a void. At the very center of that void sits a black sun with a face. Not a daemon's snarling maw, not a chaos god's shifting mask, just a face, featureless, watching. These ruins predate even the Eldar Empire, and some believe they are warnings from the pre-Eldar time, inherited like scars passed through epochs. There is one final haunting clue. The Black Library itself, the ultimate repository of Eldar knowledge regarding chaos, contains precisely one sealed chamber labeled only with a single rune, the symbol for center. It is said no Harlequin may enter it alone, and those who read its scrolls emerge changed. Some never speak again. Others join the ranks of the solitaire, souls so deeply scarred they must bear the burdens of the laughing god in silence. That the Eldar, who stare unflinching into the abyss of chaos, would seal away knowledge of the core tells us everything. Whatever lies in that forbidden heart is not just dangerous, it is unreadable, an anomaly not of the warp, but of reality itself. And to the Eldar, that makes it far more terrifying than any daemon. For all the madness that riddles the galaxy, there remains one constant among the myriad Xenos civilizations, a strange, unified silence about the galactic core. Not a silence of ignorance, but of refusal. Across the churning span of time and species, from the ancient Necrons to the naive Tau, there emerges a pattern. None have settled, explored, or meaningfully mapped the center. And those who might have known the truth seem to have buried it deliberately. Take the Tau, for instance. Their maps, crisp, clinical, arrogantly neat, end far before the galaxy's midpoint. They claim it is due to their youth, their technology, their limited reach. But even the most ambitious expansionist in the ethereal caste has never publicly voiced interest in probing toward the galactic heart. It's as if their evolution, their philosophy of the greater good, was built in such a way that they would never be tempted. Perhaps coincidence, or perhaps design. The orcs, chaotic and seemingly directionless, also avoid the core. Their ramshackle wasps stretch across every other quadrant, heedless and riotous, yet none charge inward. Not even the most insane warboss seems inclined. And when some do drift closer to the core by accident, something curdles in their minds. Their instinct, that primal, inexplicable orc cunning, screams at them to turn away. They don't know why, they just know they must. The Necrons, however, are the most chilling piece of this puzzle. Their tomb worlds are scattered across the galaxy, their empire predating even the warp's formation as we understand it. And yet, there are no known Necron tombs in the core region. In fact, there is a peculiar blankness in their archives regarding it. Cryptic texts reference the null heart, or the zone of unmaking, always with an implicit sense of reverence or fear. Some cryptexts theorize it is where the Necron-Tyre first glimpsed the true face of entropy. Others suggest it was a testing ground for the Old Ones, a failed attempt to overwrite physical laws themselves. The Hrud, those time-warping scavengers of decaying worlds, show an aversion even in their erratic migrations. Their swarms spiral through imperial space, bend around sectors consumed by warp storms, but never crawl toward the center. According to some xenolinguists, the Hrud have no word for core. They describe the galaxy not as a shape, but as a rhythm. And at its center, they say, is a silence that kills the song. When questioned, they become violent or retreat into temporal fugue. And then there are the Rakghoul, a race of brutal, semi-mythic scavengers that seem drawn to the darkest corners of the void. They, too, skirt the core. Not out of ignorance, but hunger. Scattered records from explorer fleets mention Rakghoul vessels lingering at the threshold, sniffing at the edge of the inner halo, then turning away like animals sensing a trap. One tech priest suggested they were tasting the psychic resonance of the core, and found it unnatural even by their warped appetites. What binds all of these disparate races together, some noble, some savage, some impossibly alien, is a universal recoil, a shared instinctual revulsion. Even those without centralized religions or mythologies treat the core as an unspoken boundary, a place not to be visited but circled, avoided, forgotten. Some xenobiologists argue this is the result of ancient stellar physics, a remnant of gravity wells and dark matter. Others, the kind who wear sigils of the Ordo Xenos under layers of ink and bone, argue for something far more terrifying. They say that long ago, before the galaxy was alive, something claimed that center, and everything that came after, every thinking race, every glimmer of intelligence, carries deep in its genetic soul a memory of that claim. Not knowledge, just a warning. A warning that says, stay away. The galaxy is not silent. It howls with warp storms, screams with the cries of dying worlds, and trembles beneath the psychic feedback of billions of minds. But near the center, near that shunned ancient core, the noise falters. And in its place comes something stranger, subtler, and far more terrifying. Patterns of silence pierced by pulses, like breath from a sleeper, dreaming nightmares too vast for waking comprehension. From the earliest days of the Great Crusade, expeditions charted the galaxy's stars with fervor, but the core always resisted. It wasn't just the density of stars or the interference of ancient gravitational fields. No, the difficulty was deeper, metaphysical. Navigators reported impossible geometries, distances that seemed to stretch or collapse depending on the observer, stars that shifted position mid-journey, systems that flickered in and out of warp space like blinking lights. Some thought these anomalies were natural. Others began to suspect the stars themselves were lying. Then came the beacons. Long-range Auspex arrays occasionally detect weak, irregular pulses from deep within the core. Not radio signals, not standard warp echoes, but something stranger. Tones embedded in silence. The Adeptus Mechanicus has attempted to trace their pattern, but always fails. They are not random, yet they resist encryption. Worse, they respond. Several Mechanicus Deep Voyager fleets attempted to send signals toward the beacons using bursts of binary code. 3 were lost. 1 returned, but not as it left. The tech priests aboard had no memories of their journey. Their data was corrupted beyond recovery, and their eyes, those that still had them, were filled with terror, even in death. Even more disturbing are the ghost ships. There are records of vessels, Imperial, Xenos, even pre-Imperial derelicts, reappearing centuries after they vanished into the void toward the core. Some are found intact, their hulls ancient but unstained by time. Others are wrecks held together by strange fields, as though preserved by something unwilling to let them decay. A few are discovered broadcasting signals in dead languages, whispering coordinates that do not exist. One vessel, the Lucid Thorn, was found drifting in the Segmentum Solar, its engines dead, its crew mummified. On its bridge was scrawled a message in blood: the center speaks. Some rogue psychers claim to hear voices in the silence. Not the usual warp chatter, but layered voices, singing, pleading, warning. They describe a chant not in words but in intention, a chorus of minds circling something they dare not name. The closer one gets to the core, the louder the chant becomes. Not in volume, but in certainty. As if it is not sound at all, but a command buried in reality. Attempts to reach the core are invariably stymied by warp storms that appear with uncanny precision. Whole fleets vanish into maelstroms that seem to erupt the moment they approach key trajectories. It's as though the galaxy itself refuses access. Yet sometimes, just sometimes, the storms part, revealing paths that did not exist the day before. A siren's call in the void, and those who follow rarely return. Among navigators, there is a superstition. They speak of the path of reversal, a route near the core where time bends. Some who sail it report visions of themselves aboard different ships or of stars that scream in reverse. A few emerge older than when they departed. One navigator returned blind, her third eye fused shut, weeping black tears. She simply repeated one phrase: "The way is open, it never was." Warp storms, ghost signals, ships that return centuries later, or never at all. The signs are clear to those who choose to see. The core is not simply hidden. It is alive. It reacts. It lures. And above all, it remembers. There is a theory whispered only in the darkest vaults of the Ordo Malleus and among the most heretical of tech priests. A theory that suggests the galactic core is not a natural phenomenon at all, but an ancient construct. Not merely a black hole or gravitational anomaly, but a device. A machine so vast it defies comprehension, built not of steel or ceramite, but of stars and time itself. It is called the Hollow Engine, and it is not dead. It is waiting. The basis of this theory lies in the subtle regularity of star movement near the core. Mechanicus dataseers have long noted that certain stellar objects in the intergalactic halo behave as if bound by invisible tethers, orbiting in patterns too precise to be random. These stars do not decay or collide as expected. Instead, they rotate around a central emptiness, as though held in place by artificial gravitational anchors. Some argue this is the natural result of immense mass and dark matter. Others, the ones who have truly seen, believe it is the outer shell of something far more terrible. These radicals propose that the galactic core was once hollowed out by a precursor race, older than the Necrontyre, older even than the Old Ones, a species whose technology was so advanced that it could shape entire galactic arms like tendrils. Within that void, they built an engine, not for war, not even for travel, but for control. A device designed to maintain a cosmic equilibrium, or perhaps to imprison something that threatened it. This hollow engine is theorized to be a form of psychic regulator, subtly influencing the growth of intelligent life, manipulating the tides of the warp, and guiding the evolution of sentient species. It does not act directly. It nudges, adjusts, sets parameters, ensures that no species rises too quickly, and that all who do eventually fall. This could explain the seemingly cyclical destruction of great civilizations throughout the galaxy. Not just war, not just chaos, but a guiding hand, invisible and absolute. The core, in this theory, is its command center, a place from which the engine can be observed, recalibrated, perhaps even activated, and this is where the theory turns from awe to terror. Because if the engine is a prison, then what is it holding? And if it is not a prison, but a failsafe, what was it built to stop? Some fragments recovered from deep Xenos ruins, artifacts untranslatable by even the most sacred cogitators, bear symbols that, when arranged, form the shape of a spiral with a hollow center. The glyphs surrounding this shape vary, but often translate to words like seal, mind cage, or most disturbingly, heart key. One Eldar corsair claimed his ship found such a relic, and that it sang to him in dreams. He rammed his own vessel into a sun, taking the artifact with him. The hollow engine theory also provides an unsettling explanation for the Emperor's blindness toward the core. If he is a product of the galaxy, then perhaps even he is bound by its rules set by the engine itself. His inability to confront the center could be by design, a safeguard, or a limitation imposed upon him by the same mechanism that allowed him to rise in the first place. And what if the engine is failing? The increasing instability of the warp, the birth of new psychic species, the growing incoherence of time near the core. These may not be random symptoms of a decaying universe. They may be signs that the machine at the center is beginning to fracture, or worse, that it is beginning to wake up. If that is true, then the galaxy is not just heading toward doom, it is being driven there. By a machine too old to remember its purpose, too vast to be stopped, and too broken to function as it once did. And at its heart, the hollow heart, lies something that remembers when it was whole. From the moment the first Tyranid bioships breached the galactic rim, there has been debate about where they came from. Official doctrine states they arrived from the void between galaxies, drawn by the psychic echo of sentient life like moths to flame. But in hushed halls, among radical magi biologists and rogue inquisitors, a darker theory festers, that the Tyranids did not come from beyond, but from within, that their spiral advance is not an invasion, but a return, that they are not moving inward toward Terra, they are moving home. Examine the patterns. Hive Fleet Behemoth, Kraken, Leviathan, all different vectors, all converging not on Terra itself, but into deeper galactic interiors. Not the throne, but something beyond it, the core, as if answering a signal, a gravitational call etched into the void. Each fleet curves in, avoids the center most directly, yet loops ever closer. Not a mindless feeding spiral, a migration path, a convergence. The Tyranids are unlike anything else in the galaxy. They operate beyond warp, yet warp-sensitive creatures like astropaths feel their presence as hunger incarnate. They are alive, but not in any natural sense. They mutate purposefully, adapt with terrifying speed, and they remember things they should not. A new strain appearing in Leviathan has shown behavioral mimicry of extinct species from the galactic core, species that no longer exist in any records save those locked within the Inquisition's vaults. How do the Tyranids know them? One fanatical theory, rejected even by the Ordo Xenos, is that the Tyranids were not born in another galaxy, but engineered in this one, long ago. That they were designed as a biological failsafe, a species-wide immune system for the galactic ecosystem, and that they were cast outward, slingshot through gravity wells and stellar eruptions, seeded across the void to mature and return when summoned. When the galaxy grew too chaotic, too unbalanced, or when something awoke. This paints the Tyranids not as a threat, but as a reaction, not a horde of beasts, but a symptom of deeper disease. Their vast synaptic networks, their ability to coordinate across light years, begins to resemble something horrifying, not evolution, but design. As though every hive fleet is a neuron in a brain, each invasion pulse part of a thought, and that thought is turning inward. Further evidence comes from the warp void anomalies that follow them. Areas of reality go quiet in their wake, psychic null zones that deepen as they approach the galactic core. Some radical telepathic agents argue this is not the Tyranids consuming the warp. It is the warp fleeing their proximity, as if the presence of the Great Devourer offends the fundamental laws of this universe, or those laws fear being rewritten. There are even unconfirmed reports that Hive Fleet Ouroboros, the most erratic and oldest of the fleets, never left the galaxy at all. Its paths spiral ever inward, moving closer to the center with each turn. The few survivors of encounters with it describe impossible things. Fleets moving through collapsed dimensions, Tyranids that phase between real space and something else, something deeper. Some believe Ouroboros is not a fleet but a key, a final messenger, returning not to feed but to awaken. If this is true, then the implications are unspeakable. The Tyranids are not just devourers of worlds, they are coming home, home to whatever first birthed them, home to a purpose forgotten, and whatever lies at that home at the center is not waiting passively, it is guiding them, calling them, and when they arrive, the galaxy as we know it will end, not in war, not in fire, but in assimilation. The universe has always been shaped by gods, or by things pretending to be. In the nightmare pantheon of the warp, 4 great entities reign supreme: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. They are chaos incarnate, born of mortal emotion and psychic resonance. But among the shattered prophecies and lost doctrines of forgotten sects, there exists a theory both more hopeful and more horrifying, that a 5th god is gestating, not in the warp, but in the galactic core. A god not of emotion but of potential. A god not yet born, but dreaming. The god seed. According to this heretical belief, the core of the galaxy is not just a place, it is a womb. A psychic nexus so dense, so ancient that it has begun to form a consciousness. Not chaos-born, not bound by emotion, but pure potential, the sum of every choice unmade, every future unseen. Where the ruinous powers are shaped by the screams of suffering and lust and rage, this new entity feeds on possibility itself. A god of maybes, of mights, of what could be. And that is precisely what makes it so dangerous. It is said that this god seed is not a thing of chaos, nor of order, but a rejection of both. That it exists in a state of quantum soulhood, a consciousness that does not yet know what it will become. It could be salvation, it could be annihilation. And it is watching, waiting for enough psychic energy to cross the threshold of self-awareness. The horror is that it will be shaped not by its own will, but by ours, by the sum total of mortal action. This is where the concept of the Star Child resurfaces, the belief among radical imperial cults that the Emperor in death will be reborn as a god. Traditionally, the Star Child is seen as a savior, a psychic apotheosis of mankind's destiny. But what if the Star Child and the God Seed are one and the same? What if the Emperor's spirit does not rise from Terra but descends from the core? A seed planted in ancient aeons, only now beginning to awaken. Such a notion reframes the entire galactic struggle. The wars, the betrayals, the psychic agonies of 10,000 years, not as chaos but as labor pains. The Imperium may not be a failing empire, but a cocoon. The long night of terror, not a death throe, but a birthing scream. And if the God Seed is indeed real, then every act of faith, every atrocity, every whispered heresy, they all feed it, shape it. There are ancient accounts, buried in the Codex Apocrypha of the librarians of Calixus, of a psychic singularity glimpsed during near-death experiences, a place of perfect stillness and infinite possibility. Some dying psychers report being pulled toward it, only to be yanked back by their own fear. One described it as a mirror that has not yet decided what it reflects. Others called it the child or the blank god. None ever spoke of it twice. Even the Ordo Chronos, those few time-bending agents still active after the warp-shattering horrors of the Great Rift, have speculated that the God Seed may exist outside linear causality, that it is not something that will be born, but something that already is, waiting for the rest of reality to catch up. This would make it a fixed point in fate around which all timelines bend and collapse. An omega point and an alpha trigger, all in one. The God Seed hypothesis offers one final, terrible twist. If this being is shaped by mortal will, then every act of cruelty, every moment of cowardice feeds the darker side of its potential. The Imperium's oppression, Chaos's madness, the Eldar's arrogance, the Necron's nihilism, all pouring into a growing mind with no concept of morality, only possibility. It could become a god of hope or a god of endings, and in that silence at the center of the galaxy, it waits, neither asleep nor awake, not yet born, not yet dead. The seed, the mirror, the future. And when it opens its eyes, the galaxy will change forever because it will be us. Every dream, every horror, all made manifest. It begins as a whisper, ignored. Then it grows, a pulse in the silence, a static edge on astropathic transmissions, a dream shared by minds who have never met. Near the galactic center, something is screaming. But this is not a scream of rage, nor agony. It is the scream of a mind too vast to be understood, shouting across the void in a voice made of gravity, memory, and time. The astropaths call it the scream in the silence, and it is not always heard, but once heard, it is never forgotten. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica maintains grim wards against this phenomenon. Ships that venture too close to the core are required to silence their astropaths, sedating them or binding their third eyes. The penalty for failure is death, for not just the astropath, but the entire crew. There are records of astropathic choirs tearing themselves apart mid-chant, overwhelmed by voices not their own. A few survivors claim they heard music, not words. Others speak of weeping children. One simply wrote over and over, "We are its mouth, we are its cage." These events are rare, but growing. The screams do not come from the warp, or rather they come through it, from something older, deeper. Inquisitors have described the phenomenon as anti-song, a resonance that unmakes identity. Several black ships have vanished when approaching its source. One was recovered, adrift and lightless, its gellar field perfectly intact. Inside, the psychers were gone, every one, but not dead, just missing. As if something had reached through the void and stolen only the minds. There are unclassified data records from the Segmentum Obscurus describing echo loops. Bursts of psychic sound that replay with slight variations, like reality is trying to remember a song it never learned. These echoes mimic distress calls, prayers, laughter. But beneath them, always, is the same frequency, a subharmonic tone that matches no known technology or organic function. It vibrates bones, breaks cogitators, Some tech priests have gone mad trying to isolate it, calling it the voice of the core. Perhaps the most chilling accounts come from the dead sleepers. These are psychers who have fallen into irreversible catatonia after long exposure to the scream. Their bodies live, but their minds are trapped in recursive psychic dreams. The few who are forced back to awareness under extreme duress speak in languages unknown to any Xeno scholars. Languages that match no lexicon in imperial history, and yet feel familiar. Some claim the speech causes nausea, even when translated. One Ordo Malleus interrogator executed himself after listening to a mere minute of it. The implications are horrifying, that the core is not simply a place, but a presence, a mind attempting communication not through words, but through overwhelming intent. Its scream is not a message, it is its being. To hear it is to be altered. To survive it is to carry a fragment of its dream, and it dreams of us. There are tales of captains haunted by echoes of the scream, not sounds but patterns. A ripple in how dice fall, a rhythm in footsteps, a melody heard in engine thrum. It embeds itself in moments, in decisions. One admiral turned his fleet against an entire forge world, citing whispers in the void as his only defense. The forge was obliterated, and on the black box of his flagship, one line was recorded: "It asked me to." This is the terror of the scream in the silence. That it does not simply seek to be heard, it seeks to reside. Not as a god, not as a daemon, but as an idea, a structure, a logic that rewrites those who understand it. The closer one comes to the core, the more this scream shifts from noise to instruction, to prayer. And what it prays for, none can say. Only that something is praying back. Among the infinite tomes and shifting illusions of the Black Library, there exists knowledge that defies comprehension. The harlequins who guard it are storytellers of fate, dancers of prophecy, and keepers of chaos's deepest truths. Yet even within this most complete archive of the warp, there is a silence. A silence not of ignorance, but of intention. The Black Library contains almost nothing about the galactic core, and that absence speaks louder than any scream. This omission is not accidental. Those few who have walked its labyrinthine vaults report entire sections where the record of galactic structure seems to skip the center. Charts suddenly cut inward and then leap over a blank space, like a hole in time. Tomes that reference pre-fall stellar positions leave the core completely unlabeled, often with annotations in Harlequin script, reading, "Do not dance here," or "The stage is closed." What does it mean when even the laughing god refuses the punchline? Among the Harlequins, the solitaires speak in pantomime of something they call the Forgotten Curtain. It is said to be a veil not cast by mortals or by the warp, but by the narrative itself, an enforced ignorance. When asked about the core, some Harlequins simply stop moving, freezing mid-performance as if paralyzed. Others laugh until they bleed. They cannot or will not speak of it, not even to those who have earned the trust of Sagarak's most faithful. One radical interpretation is that the Black Library once contained such knowledge, but it was removed. Not destroyed, not redacted, simply taken. Extracted in such a way that even memory of its existence was erased. There are Harlequins who claim that a vault once existed in the library's heart, a chamber whose walls were not pages but living memory, and that one day, without warning, it vanished. No psychic burst, no warp incursion, just absence, as if it had never been. Some speculate that this knowledge was removed for our protection. Others believe it was taken to feed something, a being that grows not by feeding on minds but on stories, on the truths of what we fear to name. If the core houses such an entity, then the silence of the Black Library is not cowardice, it is submission, an acknowledgement that even gods can be unmade by certain truths, that Sagarak himself turned away, laughing not in defiance but in fear. This enforced blindness bleeds into the structure of Eldar prophecy. Farseers can map the skeins of fate across 10,000 futures, but their threads break at the core. It is a knot they cannot untangle. Harlequins do not perform tales that end in the galactic center. They say those tales are unfinished. One troop master, driven mad by a vision, danced a story so dark it tore his soul from his body, and in his final bow he whispered, "There is no mask for the thing beneath." Perhaps the most disturbing artifact tied to the core is a relic known only as the spiral lens. It is not stored in the library but is known to it, a crystal that refracts not light but meaning. When gazed upon, it shows the viewer not what they seek, but what the galaxy hides from them. Every harlequin who has seen it has cut out their own eyes. Every one, save one, a solitaire who now dances only in reverse and whose shadows fall toward the galactic core, no matter where he stands. What does it mean when the galaxy's oldest repository of chaos refuses to acknowledge the core? When the gestures of fate fall silent, when the pages of history skip a beat, it means that something is there, something outside the story. Not a part of the great tragedy of gods and mortals, but its author or its eraser. The Black Library is not merely avoiding it, it is warning us. The core is not a place to be known. It is a truth that unwrites the knower. The Inquisition knows more than it dares admit. For millennia, its three major ordos, Malleus, Hereticus, and Xenos, have guarded against demons, witches, and aliens. But there are smaller, more secretive branches within its endless structure. The Ordo Chronos, which warps time itself. The Ordo Redactus, which censors knowledge even from other inquisitors. And then there are the unnamed ones. Coteries without sigils, operatives without oaths. These are the ones who peer into the dark center of the galaxy, and they do not return unbroken. From scattered fragments and forbidden records, it is clear that the Inquisition has long suspected the presence of something at the core. Not merely anomalous warp readings or Xenos megastructures, but a sentience, one which resists classification. It does not align with chaos nor order. It does not appear to serve any recognizable agenda. And yet, it acts, silently, impossibly. Testimonies from interrogators assigned to ancient deep core monitoring stations speak of increasing psychic interference, not just static but suggestion. One agent wrote that he began to dream in symbols. Not images, not words, just meanings. He hanged himself using his own purity seals. Another scrawled the phrase, "It knows I'm here," into his flesh using an Elect-2 stylus before incinerating the facility. Despite these incidents, official Imperial cartography maintains the core as a non-priority region. All efforts to map it are either underfunded or mysteriously sabotaged. Some blame the warp, others suspect more deliberate suppression. There are entire dossiers in the Librarium Venenum that have been encoded in self-corrupting data wraiths, files which erase themselves when opened. A level of paranoia that suggests not fear of discovery, but fear of comprehension. The Ordo Malleus, dedicated to rooting out demonic threats, has conflicting doctrines on the core. Some of its oldest tomes classify it as a black wound in real space, left by a god weapon detonated during the war in heaven. Others say it is a soul grave, where the last true enemy of the Chaos Gods lies buried. But the most heretical belief, spoken only by the damned, is that the core is an Inquisition construct. Not literal, but conceptual, that the organization was created not to protect humanity, but to distract it, to keep its psychic will from focusing on the center. If this is true, then the entire ecclesiarchy, the entire Imperium, is a shell, a shadow play designed to keep our gaze turned outward toward heresy and horror, while the true danger remains veiled. Consider, every heretic burned, every Xenos purged, every demon banished, each act of zealous distraction. But distraction from what? And who orchestrates it? The Ordo Chronos once attempted a covert temporal insertion into the core's periphery. The result was catastrophic. Their agents emerged aged beyond recognition, or regressed into screaming infants. One reportedly returned fused with his own shadow. The mission was erased from official records, but rumors persist that the data collected from it were locked behind a triple cipher code called the Aeonic Gate. No one has broken it. Some believe it cannot be broken because it was never written in language, but in time itself. The Inquisition does not deny the core. It fears it. It contains it, not with walls, but with ignorance. It does not speak of it, not with silence, but with fire. And should anyone learn too much, the response is immediate. One word: exterminatus. Not of planets, of minds. And yet, the core stirs. Despite the chains of secrecy, despite the walls of flame and forgetfulness, it dreams. It dreams of the fools who tried to blind the galaxy, and of the light it will cast when it finally opens its eye. Not fire, not madness, but truth. Terrible, devouring, perfect truth. There are places in the galaxy that no map can hold. Not because they are hidden, but because they are outside. Outside logic, outside time, outside everything that defines a place as real. The center of the galaxy is one such place. But some call it by another name, the heart of the labyrinth. A place not merely forbidden but fundamentally incompatible with perception. A place whose existence breaks not laws, but the assumption that laws exist at all. The term labyrinth is not metaphor. It appears in records across civilizations, from the ancient Necrontire to fragmented Eldari poetry. In each, it refers to a structure not of stone, but of decisions, a maze built of possibility. Every choice a path, every path a wall. The center of this labyrinth is not a destination, it is a being, a presence, a god perhaps, or a prisoner, or something worse, a question without an answer, echoing so loudly it became real. The concept defies logic, and yet fragments persist. The Eldar whisper of a place where prophecy dies, not fails, not misleads, but simply ceases to function, a dead zone in the skein of fate. Even Yniad, the god of the dead, has no voice there. The Harlequins refuse to dance stories that approach its borders. One solitaire who tried was struck mute, not by trauma, but by definition. He no longer contained language. His thoughts ceased to be sequences. He became a stillness in motion. The Necrons refer to the core with a name that roughly translates as the central contradiction. Some cryptexts speculate that it is a knot of failed causality, a point where too many timelines overlapped and burned out. Others believe it is the grave of the first Khitan, whose essence was not shattered but inverted, turned inside out and left to spin at the galaxy's heart like a beacon of paradox. There is a Mechanicus legend, apocryphal of course, of a data savant who traced power signatures from the inner halo and discovered a pattern, a slow, deliberate pulse like the ticking of a clock made from ruined suns. She believed the center was not a prison but a womb, not birthing a being, but reality itself, a machine that generates truth one layer at a time. She vanished after submitting her findings. Her name is now a restricted search term. And then there are the unthinkable ideas, the ones not whispered but dreamt, as if sent, that the core is not a place at all, that it is a mirror turned inside out, that every choice, every fear, every soul eventually folds inward into the labyrinth, where they become bricks in the impossible structure that binds the galaxy together. That we are all part of it. That the galaxy itself is not orbiting the core. It is orbiting us, the choices we have not yet made. The heart of the labyrinth cannot be approached in the traditional sense. Ships that attempt to chart its coordinates find themselves looping, not physically, but conceptually. They repeat thoughts, repeat motives. One rogue trader kept trying to name his ship's cat for 8 days straight, unable to move beyond the first syllable. Another fleet found its crew aging forward and backward simultaneously, memories folding like origami until they remembered events that had never occurred, including their own destruction. A single artifact has ever returned from the edge of the labyrinth, a tube of impossible geometry, constantly unfolding but never changing size. It hums in silence. It has no surface, and yet reflects light. It cannot be scanned. Those who touch it cease streaming, forever. The Mechanicus call it the Tesseract Prime. The Inquisition calls it the Proof. The Eldar call it a mistake. Whatever lies at the heart of the labyrinth, it is not waiting. It is, and it does not seek worship or conquest. It seeks only integration. It does not destroy, it incorporates. One thought at a time, one choice, one truth. Until there is no outside, only the center, only the heart. So what does it mean, all of it? The void in the center of the galaxy, the fractured maps, the silenced gods, the vanished ships, the dreams that echo with alien thoughts. It means that something is there, something vast enough to warp destiny, subtle enough to remain unnamed across eons, and terrifying enough that even the chaos gods look away. But perhaps the greatest horror is not that something waits at the galactic core. It's that something works, shaping the galaxy moment by moment, thought by thought. What if the entire history of the galaxy, every war, every rise and fall, is a game whose rules we never understood, and the being at the center is not a player, but the game itself? Not a god, but the rule by which gods are measured, the black sun that casts no light, yet from which all other stars take their place. It does not hunger, it does not hate, it merely is. And because it is, so are we. The hive mind's march, the Black Library's omission, the Emperor's blindness, the Eldar's fear, all orbiting a single terrible point, that this being, this architect of the core, may be the one constant across all realities. A sentience so fundamentally embedded in the fabric of space and causality that to name it is to empower it, and to deny it is to obey it. What if chaos was not the ultimate threat? What if chaos is merely the echo of this thing's movement? The theories we've explored, the hollow engine, the god seed, the labyrinth heart, they are not separate. They are masks, interfaces, attempts by limited minds to describe an unlimited presence. We cannot see it directly. We do not have the language, but we feel it. In the dying thoughts of astropaths, in the rhythmic madness of warp storms, in the choices we make without knowing why, something guides or waits or watches. The galaxy ends there, and perhaps so does its purpose. Maybe the Imperium's true mission was never to conquer the stars, but to contain the center. Maybe the Emperor, in his final moments of lucidity, understood that the long war was not with chaos or Xenos, but with a thought too powerful to be thought. A truth that infects minds not with belief, but with reality. A presence that does not ask for worship, but simply becomes the only thing left to believe in. And that is what makes it the final threat. Because if this being is not merely in the center, if it is the center, then it is not confined by distance. It exists wherever attention is paid. Each time we ask what lies in the core, we empower it. Each time we dream of it, it grows clearer. Each theory, each secret, each story is a key. We have handed it 13, and now it waits, not with hunger, not with cruelty, but with inevitability. The final foe of all sentient life will not arrive in a tide of claws or fire or madness. It will not scream or burn. It will not even kill. It will simply overwrite us, calmly, completely, as it always has, because we were never outside it. We were always inside. There are places that defy extinction, not because they are protected, but because they must exist, anchored into the psychic lattice of the galaxy by something more than gravity or memory. In hidden tongues, they are called anchor points or tether loci. But the Inquisition has another name for them. Echo wells. These are the rare sites that resonate with the presence of the galactic center, despite being tens of thousands of light years away. And what they reveal may be more terrifying than the core itself. Echo wells are locations where space and perception behave as if touched by the labyrinthine consciousness of the core. They are scattered across every segmentum, often disguised as ruins, star tombs, or failed psychic temples. But their common trait is this: they bleed history. Time runs strangely within them, not linearly, but inward. Events echo, not forward, not back, but toward a central point that cannot be reached. Each echo well is a model of the core, a fractal eye staring into reality, inviting comprehension and punishing it. One of the most infamous is located in the decay vaults of Clorion Thwelth, a derelict Mechanicus world abandoned after reports of recursive cogitation failures, servitors in endless loops of non-function, logic engines dreaming of non-numbers. At the heart of the vault was a room filled with glass spheres, each containing a single syllable of a language no one had ever spoken. When played in sequence, they form a melody that matches the subharmonics found in the center's ghost signals. Another echo well lies beneath the polar ice of Kephra Prime, where the frozen corpses of 6,000 psychers remain unrotted. Each corpse is inscribed with a word in their own blood, and when connected, the words form a passage from a play that does not exist. A play entitled The Hunger That Listens. One scholar who tried to reconstruct it gouged out his own tongue before finishing the second act. But these anomalies are not confined to remote wastelands. Some are hidden in plain sight. The Palace of Terra itself has chambers long sealed, not by locks, but by consensus. Rooms that no one enters because they do not believe they can, even if they stand before them. Custodies walk past them without comment. Administratum clerks skip their numbers and data logs, but deep scans have shown the faint pulse of warp cant within, as if the core is watching even from within the throne world. More disturbing still are the humans born within echo wells. They are not mutants, not psychers, but something else. They grow without identity, without past. Many do not speak. A few speak only in dreams, dreams that overlap with those of others, creating shared visions across continents. When asked to describe these dreams, they speak of a dark horizon with no sky, and a single word etched into the ground: before. This phenomenon has inspired a terrifying hypothesis, that echo wells are not just echoes from the center, but preludes, that the being or consciousness at the heart of the galaxy is expanding outward, not spatially, but ontologically, changing what it means to exist. These wells may be its fingers, or its memories, or its first dreams, budding into reality like cancer into flesh. The Ordo Sepulchrum, a black archive coterie so secret it is said to reside within a null dimension, believes that echo wells are not anomalies at all. They are T's. That when 13 are aligned, by action, by thought, by fate, they will unlock a pathway not to the center, but to its intention. And that such an alignment is already happening. Not orchestrated, not planned, but emergent. As if the galaxy itself is moving toward an answer it cannot refuse. If true, then our stories, our wars, our loves and betrayals, they are not accidents, they are resonance. We are not observers, we are participants in a ritual older than causality. And the being at the center? It is not a thing, it is a response to what we do not know. But echo wells tell us this: it is listening, and it is ready to reply. In the oldest myths of lost civilizations, there is a recurring figure, a presence not described directly, but implied through absence. A silent judge, a final witness, an architect whose only signature is erasure. Some call it the witness at the threshold, others the veil walker. But to those who have studied the signs long enough, there is a growing belief that this figure is not fiction. It is real, and it is moving, not through space, but through stories, through narrative logic, and that means it is coming for us all. What if the center of the galaxy is not just a location, but a narrative singularity, a place where all stories end because it is the end of story itself? The witness would then be not a god, not a monster, but the final shape of meaning. A being that does not destroy you by killing you, but by concluding you. A perfect ending. A punctuation too heavy for any soul to bear. It appears subtly, first in dreams, then in patterns. Librarians begin to find the same phrase repeated in books that were never written together. And when the silence fell, it stood. Across imperial shrines, statues begin to deteriorate in identical ways. Their eyes vanish, not chipped, not worn, simply smooth. Even cogitators start reporting errors not of code, but of tone. As if the machine spirit refuses to speak, not from malfunction, but from dread. In the warp, the daemons have no name for it, but they flinch when certain glyphs are drawn. The laughing god of the Eldar will not jest near the core. Even Tzeentch, the god of change, avoids peering into the paths that lead too close. And that says everything. Because for a being like Tzeentch, who sees all futures, the only thing it cannot tolerate is an ending. Some of the Emperor's own private revelations stored within the Akashic vaults of the Sigillite speak of a presence that predated the Chaos Gods. Not in time, but in function. A mind that did not act, but witnessed. Not with eyes, but with law. That when the first sentient being asked the first question, this thing awoke. Not to answer, but to record. And once all questions are asked, it will arrive. The Necron Silent King, when he returned, was reportedly obsessed with the direction of time. His crusade against chaos was not merely to reassert dominion, but to prevent the final convergence, a point he called Kinzerith, or the folding of all things. He would not explain further. But before leaving Imperial space, he warned a lone Inquisitor, "You are not the protagonists, you are the setting," and the curtain falls. There are planets that vanish not in flame, but in narrative. Worlds that are forgotten not because they are unimportant, but because they have concluded. Ships emerge from warp to find systems that no longer exist, not destroyed but unreferenced. The stars rearrange. Astropathic signals fall silent. All records shift subtly, as if a chapter has been removed from the book of existence. These are the marks of the witness. It is not a god, it is not a predator, it is not cruel, it does not hunger, it does not kill, it ends. And when it ends you, there is no pain, no scream, no salvation, only closure. Your life does not unravel, it is completed. You are not destroyed, you are understood, so perfectly that nothing more can ever be said of you again. And it is approaching the center, or perhaps it is the center. Because the truest shape of all things is the one we cannot tell, the story that finishes itself, and in so doing, finishes you. So beware the narrative. Beware the threads that tug too tightly. Beware the moment when your choices begin to feel scripted. Because when you are no longer afraid, when you feel peace in a galaxy that has never known peace, when you think, just for a moment, that you've reached the end, That's when the witness sees you. And when it sees you, you are already gone. If this lore compelled you, disturbed you, or changed how you see the stars, consider subscribing. We delve into Warhammer's darkest shadows, and your support helps us go deeper still. Until next time, remember, the greatest threat is not the monster you fear, but the one you cannot imagine.